Questions? Leader.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Premier. Can the Premier explain to the House why there are 21,700 more unemployed in this state since he became the Premier?
Good question.
Premier.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Because the economy is in transition, and we have employment.
The member for MacKillop is called to order.
And employment continues to grow and has over each of the last 5 months, despite the increasing unemployment rate.
The Deputy Leader is warned.
In the last month was largely due to an increase in the participation rate. We've actually seen 5 months of growth in the South Australian employment market.
I call the member for Hyson to order.
What people are witnessing is simultaneously the destruction of jobs through the decline of old industries and the creation of jobs through industries which are growing.
I warn the member for Hammond.
And the question really in front of the people of South Australia, indeed this Parliament, is not simply to talk up the size of the challenge, but to commit ourselves collectively to meeting it. And we have decided to do that through the establishment of an economic plan for the future of our state, which has 10 priorities, which we have been pursuing, and we will
is called to order,
and which we will diligently pursue. And Mr Speaker, when there are shocks or upsets or pieces of bad news, we will not be deflected. We will not be deflected from our course. We will not be deflected from our course. We will just diligently work away at the execution of this plan. The next phase of which
I call the member for Schubert to order.
The next phase of which, of course, is the budget that will be revealed on Thursday. This will be the next phase in this important step. Mr Speaker, there are currently a range of threats to the economy in South Australia. The
member for Finnis is warned.
The most important of which is the general slowdown in the Australian economy, but also specific South Australian threats, which include the twin threats associated with a sustained high Australian dollar for a very extended period, which had a particular effect on the manufacturing industry when it was sustained for such a long period of time. Unfortunately, we did not.
I warn the member for Hartley.
We did not.
I call the member for Unley to order.
We did not enjoy the benefits associated with that high Australian.
I call the member for Adelaide to order.
The mining. Well, I also want the clock restarted by about a minute. The clock should be restarted by about a minute as well.
Sorry?
The clock needs to be restarted by about a minute for these interruptions.
Yes, I'll give the Premier some time on as a result of the disorder.
Mr Speaker, the effect of the perfect storm associated with a high Australian dollar for a sustained period of time without...
The member for Hyson is warned.
I'm curious about a question that's asked, sir, but then the immediate interjection without wanting to hear any of the answer throughout the course of it. It's clearly, Mr Speaker...
Member for Mitchell is called to order.
Those opposite simply do not understand the nature of the challenge and are not prepared to be part of the solution. And the nature of the challenge is that we have a federal government that's turned its back on South Australia, a federal government that has slashed $500 million in funding to our car industry, that has created uncertainty in our defence sector, has created uncertainty in our renewable energy sector, has cut $5.5 billion out of our education and health budgets. All of that creates a depressing effect on the South Australian...
Point of order.
I ask you whether the Premier is indeed debating the question, sir.
Well, the interjections are coming so thick and fast that the Premier has plenty of opportunity to divert, if indeed he is diverting, from the substance of the question because of those interjections. If he were heard in silence, then I could be stricter. Premier.
Frankly, it goes directly to the substance.
Point of order.
You allowed the Premier an extra minute. There's now 5 minutes gone, so that seems to add up to the extra minute already being gone.
Well, I thank the member for Hyson, which has the assistance of people on the terraces in a soccer game. I'm the timekeeper. Premier.
Thank you, sir. What we now know from all of those factors, from the international economy, which is not giving the South Australia any free kicks, from a federal government that's turned its back upon South Australia, is that we can no longer rely on either the world or indeed the nation around us to give us a free kick. We have to create our own destiny. We have shaped an economic plan for ourselves. We are reaching out to grow those jobs in the industries of the future. We are seeking to create the opportunities that we know are in front of us, and what would be advantageous for the people of South Australia, for this Parliament, if we were joined by an opposition that was prepared to share in that task, so that instead of simply complaining and whinging and moaning, they shared with us a collective effort to pursue our economic plan for the future of South Australia.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. Can the Premier explain to the House why South Australia was the only state in Australia where unemployment rose during the month of May?
Premier.
Well, I can say...
Member for Stewart's called to order.
It's essentially...
Member for Morialta is called to order.
As with many of these economic indicators, they reflect the consequences of economic pressures that have occurred in the past. The high Australian dollar, which
Member for Adelaide is warned.
A substantial... Mr. Speaker, if those opposite would like a little lecture about the structure of the South Australian economy and how we are particularly exposed to an exchange rate which is high, I'm happy to give them that explanation.
Member for Chaffey is called to order. South
Australia relies very heavily on exchange rate sensitive product and services.
The Treasurer is called to order.
This is a particular phenomenon within South Australia and has had a particular effect on South Australia. But while those opposite are prepared to always seek to grab statistics which suit their purpose to talk down South Australia, it's interesting that they become silent when there is news which points in the opposite direction. So, for instance, state final demand, which demonstrated that state final demand, this was the statistic of choice for those opposite when it seemed to suit their argument that we were heading into recession a few years ago. Remember state final demand, that was the statistic of choice for the opposition. Well, South Australia recorded its second strongest seasonally adjusted performance in state final demand among all of the states in the March quarter after Victoria, so second only to Victoria, of 1.3%. It is a movement based on...
The leader is called to order.
This is the same statistic that the leader would parade around month after month to try and predict that the South Australian economy was in recession. This is the statistic that the Leader of the Opposition would parade around to say that the South Australian economy was in difficulty. Well, that very same statistic is the second strongest performance in the nation. There is no assistance given to the people of South Australia to either exaggerate the nature of the challenge facing South Australia, nor is there any service granted in actually not telling it how it is. And we have always been prepared to front up to the fact that testing times are upon us here in South Australia. We accept that. We accept that this is an economy in transition. Yes. We accept that there are industries in decline, and the challenge for South Australia is to grow those sectors of the economy which are growing faster than the national average. and make sure that those industries have the opportunity to create the jobs necessary to allow our citizens to have the employment that they need. But we have a challenge in front of us here. We can either be the case study in an economy that was unable to make this transition, or we can actually emerge stronger and more effective as a consequence of it. That's the challenge in front of us, and we invite those opposite, instead of offering their criticisms and their moaning and their whinging about where we are at the present state of affairs.
The member for Adelaide is warned for the second and final time.
Of South Australia. We've published our economic plan. It is an open invitation. It is an open invitation for those opposite to promote initiatives that speak to it, or indeed, if they have an alternative economic plan, to actually lay it out in front of the people of South Australia.
The Leader is warned for the second and final time for making a display.
Mr. Speaker,
the Leader will be seated.
Mr. Speaker, during the last election campaign, everybody well remembers the Leader of the Opposition for one image and one image alone, that is of a man running away.
A further supplementary?
No, sir, another question.
Another question.
Thank you. My question is to the Premier. Does the Premier still believe that there will be no significant job losses as a result of the strategic review currently being undertaken by Arrium?
Premier.
I've never said that there will be no significant job losses as a consequence of the review by Arrium. What I said was asked is that that was not the purpose of the review, to undertake a massive job shedding exercise. The purpose of the review by Arrium, and I think a very sensible purpose, is to look in a clear-sighted way at the fact that the price of iron ore is very low, and they have to make sure that their costs of production are indeed lower so that they can turn a profit and ensure the long-term sustainability of their business. Now, as I also said yesterday, you would be worried if Arrium was not undertaking a review of that sort. That would tell you that they had actually accepted that it was impossible to make changes that were going to ensure that their costs of production were below the price of iron ore, and that would be a very worrying sign indeed. We're deeply engaged with Arrium, sir. We have a task force which has been set up for this purpose. We are engaged with them about discussions about how we can contribute to the review, how we can partner with Arrium in a range of ways to ensure their long-term sustainability. And this is something that, as we're engaged with all of the Upper Spencer Gulf towns and cities and the particular industries that sustain them, this receives our constant and diligent attention, and it's our intention to maintain our contact with that organisation. I think the remarks that were reported from the Chief Executive of Arrium today, or at least one of the representatives of the company, which suggested that it was not their intention to engage in major job shedding. That's welcome to hear that news. Of course, that can't be ruled out because of the nature of the international commodity market in which they are deeply involved. But we will be a willing partner. We understand and assert a role for government in partnership with business. We don't, for ourselves, take the position of those opposite, most strongly represented through the Leader, which is to take your hands off the wheel and hope that something turns up. We are an active partner with the private sector to create jobs here in South Australia and to protect
is
those
warned
jobs
for the
that we
second
already
and
have.
final time.
Thank you, sir. Has the Premier sought any advice from Arrium as to when the strategic review will be completed and announced to the people of South Australia?
Treasurer.
I'm in regular contact with the Chief Executive of Arrium, Mr Speaker, and I was very disappointed to see the remarks of the Leader of the Opposition yesterday, because the workforce at Arrium, the workforce in Whyalla, are working very, very hard to get the costs of operating that iron ore mine that Arrium are running down. Mr Speaker, make no mistake, Arrium make no apology for saying, in terms of all the governments that they deal with, the one government the one government that is always standing by their side is this government. When they seek, Mr. Speaker, to put feedstock into their steelworks, we don't charge them royalties. When it comes...
Point of order, Deputy Leader.
Of relevance. The Premier asked a very specific question about the expected date of delivery of the strategic report. Nothing to do with...
Yes, I uphold the point of order.
Thank you.
Speaker, and the Chief Executive, Mr. Roberts, was very keen to let me know that the strategic review shouldn't be taken in the context as focusing entirely on Whyalla. His views are, sir, that Arrium has many operations across Australia, and he wished that as many of those operations were as well supported by those governments as the ones in South Australia are by our government. And as the review undertakes itself, so Mr. Speaker, he will make things available to the market. But Mr. Speaker, I want to point out again, prematurely coming out and saying that there'll be massive job losses in Whyalla is simply untrue.
Point of order.
You've already ruled on this, and he's now deliberately defying your ruling.
Well, listen carefully. Oh, they finished. Supplementary, Member for Stewart.
Supplementary to the Minister. In all of the conversations that the Minister has had with Arrium on this topic, has Arrium ever confirmed for him or the Premier or anybody in the government that neither the mine nor the steelworks at Whyalla will be divested?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, first and foremost, the Whyalla Steelworks is completely integrated into the company and a key asset for Arrium, and the idea that somehow Arrium would sell the steelworks really defeats their entire business model. And I know that the opposition have been briefed by Arrium. I know that the opposition have had meetings with Arrium and know about their strategic review, and these questions do nothing for the confidence of the people of Whyalla. And quite frankly, I think the opposition spokesperson knows better than that. In terms of the mine, Mr. Speaker...
Well, the Minister will not debate the answer.
In terms, Mr. Speaker, of the mine, Arrium came to us and was seeking approvals to get access to some very high-grade ore very close to the surface. We were able very quickly to get them the approvals that they needed. They are, Mr. Speaker, I think, committed to the mine. I've heard nothing, Mr. Speaker. Any public evidence at all that shows that Arrium are looking to divest themselves of that mine. But Mr. Speaker, they are entitled to do what they want with their assets, and we are entitled to do what we want with our support. And we stand by Arrium, Mr. Speaker, and we stand by the people of Whyalla. And I think the people of Whyalla are sick and tired of Liberal politicians always talking about them being destroyed. They're a resilient city and they'll survive.
The second time in two questions he's defying your ruling, sir.
I'm not sure that he's defying my ruling, but I uphold the point of order about debate. Leader.
Thank you, sir. What is the government doing to support the estimated 580 workers who lost their jobs in the last round of job cuts announced by Arrium earlier this year?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we've asked the Commonwealth Government to also help with us. Well, the people of Arrium also do reside in the federal electorate of Grey, which has a Commonwealth... well, I'm trying to. And the moment I said I asked the Commonwealth Government for any assistance, members opposite scoffed. Can I also just add...
Member for Chaffey is warned for the second and final time, and so is the member for
and they're entitled to go to the Member of Parliament for assistance. And I can't believe that members opposite would scoff, Mr. Speaker, at the mere suggestion that we've gone to the Commonwealth to seek assistance. I've got to think, Mr. Speaker, you've got to say the opposition are so desperate to score a political point at the suffering of others.
Straight question, that one.
I'll listen to what the Treasurer says.
Mr. Speaker, the Premier has visited the people of Whyalla and met with Arrium. I've met with Arrium now, I think, Mr. Speaker, 3 or 4 times since that announcement about trying to assist workers and contractors who've lost their employment. We are working to try and help Arrium get through this low commodity price. But remembering, Mr. Speaker, that iron ore companies across the country are going through very similar problems. The idea that somehow the state government can prop up iron ore prices to keep people employed in mines is quite laughable. And any politician who turns up and tells you they can keep a mine open longer, or they can employ more people at a mine longer, quite frankly, isn't being honest with you. So, Mr. Speaker, we are doing all we can to try and help those employees. But most importantly, the best thing we can do in this upcoming budget for the people of Whyalla is offer them the ability, Mr. Speaker, to go out and give those businesses the opportunity to go out and employ more people, to encourage those small businesses to go out and hire more people, to help them, Mr. Speaker, go out and create more jobs with more investment. So we are deeply involved with Arium, Mr. Speaker, especially in the steelworks and the mine, to help them make that mine as productive as possible. And when commodity prices return, they can return to the levels of employment that they had previously.
The Leader is warned for the second and final time.
Thank you, sir.
Leader.
Thank you. My question is to the Premier. Given the uncertainty over the future of power generation and related industries in Port Augusta since before 2012, what has the government been doing for the past 3 years to secure the future of those workers who face the prospect of losing their jobs before 2018?
Treasurer.
Mr. Speaker, the idea that we can keep open a brown-fired coal power station, quite frankly, is ridiculous. Mr. Speaker, coal as a form of commodity to keep power stations open is dying, and it's dying around the world. Mr. Speaker,
Member for Hammond is warned for the second and final time.
Let's just remember that at Port Augusta, that fire station was not operating at full capacity. In fact, it wasn't operating throughout the entire year either. And the reason it wasn't doing that is that demand in the grid is down. Demand in the grid is down, Mr. Speaker. Now, these are national factors. We are part of a national electricity market, Mr. Speaker. We don't just generate the power we need for the southern state, Mr. Speaker. So the idea, Mr. Speaker, about the interconnector between Victoria is also for us to be able to move our cheaper renewable energy into Victoria, Mr. Speaker. So we want a truly national market. And again, Mr. Speaker, I know members opposite were opposed to interconnection when they were last in office because they wanted to fatten the land before sale for ETSA. So they did all they could to try and stop interconnection. We believe in more interconnection, Mr. Speaker, because we want to have a truly competitive national electricity market. But the idea that we could somehow keep open a coal-fired generator like the one supplied by coal from Lee Creek, Mr. Speaker, quite frankly, is not feasible. It's not feasible. And the reason it's not feasible, Mr. Speaker, given the investments that Alinta have made, is that there is not enough demand in the system. This is a national problem. We need a national response to grow demand in the system, Mr. Speaker. We need more industrial growth. We need more investment in our industries. Perhaps, Mr. Speaker, more things like manufacturing our submarines. Manufacturing more frigates, Mr. Speaker, will increase demand. But instead, Mr. Speaker, we've seen with the new policy of direct action, no direct investment in coal-fired generators, no assistance from direct action into coal-fired power stations, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Schubert
the truth
may
is,
have
Mr.
a salient
Speaker,
point, but he is warned.
The truth is, Mr. Speaker, no government could have saved Alinta. No government could have saved those workers at Lee Creek. But what we can do is offer them new opportunities, offer them new jobs by creating the opportunities in the state budget, Mr. Speaker, by trying to make sure that we can incentivise business to grow.
I'm glad the students from East Marden Primary School have left and will not see their member warned for the second and final time. Leader.
Thank you, sir. Given that the Treasurer has just outlined that the feasibility of coal-fired power stations has been on the cards for some extended period of time, I'm wondering whether he can explain to the House what the government has been doing over the last 3 years to secure employment for the people of Port Augusta who work in that sector, and more particularly whether or not they will have opportunities in that region.
Yes, this is a bit of a run-on question, Premier.
Yeah, a very similar question, but it's worth, I think, reminding people of the economic plan that we've set out for South Australia, which is all about growing jobs, not just in Port Augusta, but across the whole of the South Australian economy. And in particular, for Port Augusta, we have strongly promoted the use of renewable energy and the use of new innovative technologies to grow jobs. An important success story is Sundrop Farms, which uses solar technologies to desalinate water, and actually, well, in fact, it's 200 jobs, and we're in discussions with them to expand their Yes, they have. They have 300 jobs.
The leader will be quiet.
Well, Mr. Speaker, he asks what we've done to try and create jobs. We have a company that announces 300 jobs in the construction phase, 200, I think 170 to 200 in its operational phase. And then he wants to know where these jobs are. Well, the company has made the investment. They are building, as we speak, the expansion on the fringe of Port Augusta. This is precisely the sort of jobs of the future which we are dedicated to providing. Looking at making sure that the technologies that actually accept that we are in a carbon-constrained world, where we're not going to be able to use carbon emission technologies which are polluting our atmosphere. We need to use the new forms of energy. And this is a company which has accepted the leadership role that the South Australian Government has played. We've worked closely with Sundrop Farms. It has been directly as a result of their efforts and our partnership that Sundrop Farms have created this fantastic new enterprise. And they have ambitions to grow it. And we will be a partner with them to see whether we can allow those ambitions to become a reality, because now we have a very significant imperative with the loss of jobs at the power station. I've also taken a leadership role in relation to solar thermal. That the Minister for Energy has been sent to witness these farms in the United States. He's played a role in ensuring that we offer all the appropriate support we can to ensure that that technology has been successful. We know that there is a proponent who is actively proposing a solar thermal plant in the Port Augusta precinct. Now, I don't want to raise expectations about either the success of that project. Well, it's a serious project with serious proponents that we're working closely with, and everyone else might be laughing, but the member for Port Augusta understands it is a serious proposal, and he's not joining in the laughter. What I do want to say is that there are...
Point of order.
I take offence at the idea that I've been laughing at this, as no other member in the chamber has indeed been laughing at it.
Premier, would you be seated for a moment? If the member for Hyson asks one more question out of order, I will liberate her from question time. And the member for Adelaide is in the same boat. Premier.
Mr. Speaker, we're working closely with the proponents to make that a reality. And while there may be many jobs in the construction phase, many hundreds of jobs in the construction phase of a solar thermal plant, the truth is its operation on a long-term basis probably only creates in the order of about 35 jobs. So while that's important, and obviously if we can gather together 35 jobs here, another 35 jobs there, obviously we can start to bridge the gap between the jobs that we've lost at the Port Augusta Power Station. But the truth is that all of these efforts are directed at the very things that we've set out in our economic plan, directed at the jobs of the future. And while we can bemoan the jobs of the past which are in decline, we need to get on with the task of the challenge of creating and growing those jobs in sectors which have opportunities for the future. The food industry represents a massive opportunity for our state, and indeed this region with its massive amounts of sunshine and clean soil, clean air and clean water. This is an important economic opportunity for the Port of Port Augusta.
Supplementary, member for Stewart.
Given the Premier's answer, is the Premier aware that the operation of the Sundrop Farm project requires the extraction of water and the return of brine from and to the Gulf, and also the management of its own renewable electricity? It requires the Port Augusta Power Station to be in place to allow those things to happen. And if so, what is he and his government doing to allow those things to happen without the power station?
Minister.
That's absolutely right. It does.
The Minister, could you be seated? It is prohibited to use flash photography. Would security please remove the gentleman with the red stripe? Minister.
That's right, Mr Speaker. There was an arrangement with Sundrop Farms and Alinta Energy, and we are working through those. Alinta Energy have engaged with Sundrop, as has the government task force, set up for the Upper Spencer Gulf region to try and maintain that employment. I understand a solution has been found. I understand that Alinta and Sundrop Farms are quite satisfied with the solutions that have been found. They've asked us not to make those public just yet, but I understand those solutions will be public soon. And when they are public, sir, I will bring that back. But that's the advice I've received. I don't have the details of the solution here with me, but I'm happy to offer the member a briefing because I know, Mr Speaker, he's actually worried about his community and he's interested in the long-term prospects of the jobs, not slogan shouting like the Leader of the Opposition.